Okay. Well, welcome to our first workshop of the school year with Alyson Provax. I'm super excited to host her for her exhibition Out of Nothing, which is up now through November 8th at archergallery.space. It's been such a pleasure working with you, Alyson. I'm so excited that we've had all this time and all these different ways that we've been able to kind of work with your work and, with today with the workshop, just kind of another component, adding it into all the different layers and levels of this exhibition. So really, really exciting. If you haven't checked it out, it's at archergallery.space, and lots of different cool pieces up on there, and even interactive components in there as well. My name is Michelle Raymond, and I'm the director of Archer Gallery and Clark Art Talks. So just a couple things to note before we get started today with the workshop. Obviously we have Alyson's work up through November 8th. After that, we will have a solo exhibition by Laura Kim, and her work is going to be really fun and just really colorful and animated. She does a lot with digital content, dancing. She's going to have, I think, several workshops, so we'll have a couple of these kind of happening between, I think her show opens on November 19th, and it'll go through the beginning of February, so we'll have a few of those workshops kind of happening during those times. Our next Clark Art Talk is also going to be around that time that Laura's show opens. I believe it's November 18th, again at noon, with Kathy Liu, who is a Bay Area ceramicist and sculptor. Really, really fabulous, colorful pieces as well. And I think you'll really enjoy hearing from her. So November 18th, Clark Art Talk is the next one we have coming up. And with that, I want to say a few thank yous again to the ASCC, Associated Students of Clark College. Thank you so much for funding us. Thank you so much for your support. Also, thank you so much to the art department. Again, Katharina, thank you for being here and bringing your students. Thank you for, just really being here in all different ways and capacities to support our programs at Clark. And then obviously thank you to Alyson for being here today and for giving of your time and thoughts and work, and it's a really beautiful thing, and I think your work has just reached so many different people and so many different levels again, and I'm really just so thankful to have you working with us this term. So yeah, I just want to give a little introduction before we kind of get into things, but of course, if you weren't here for the art talk, I just want you to know a little bit about Alyson and her fabulous work and art practice before we kind of dive in. So Alyson, of course, lives in Portland, Oregon. So she lives kind of just down the street from me, which is great. And her text-based works discuss themes of loneliness and uncertainty, feelings many of us have been feeling since the beginning of the pandemic. So I feel like her work is super accessible and relatable and very timely and of the moment. She has also shown her work all over the country and internationally, regionally at Carnation Contemporary, Wolf Gallery, and Up 4 Gallery in Portland, as well as nationally at AIR Gallery in New York City, the Montalvo Art Center in California, and internationally at the Blue Project Foundation in Barcelona, Spain. Her work has appeared in articles in New York Magazine, Newsweek, and Art Slant. So a very impressive CV. And it is my pleasure to have her here today again with us and to have this workshop with her. So if you could help me welcome her with a little bit of applause, that would be fabulous. Thanks, Alyson.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here again today for a little workshop with everyone. So I wanted to sort of look at text-based art and concrete poetry, and then we'll sort of take some time after looking through some slides to play around with it ourselves. So I'm Alyson. Michelle already introduced me. I'm sure that many of you have probably already seen my show at Archer Gallery. If you can't, there's still time to check it out. I'm a letterpress artist. working in text a lot. Sometimes I also make billboards or bus bench advertisements. And last year I made a paperback book with volumes. So what do words mean? I wanted to start there, and I have some notes here too. But so we think that we know what words means. We talk to each other all the time. We email and text and all of this. But there's also oftentimes misunderstandings in those mediums, right? Because words can mean multiple things, phrases can mean multiple things. Sometimes we will write or say something intending on these multiple meanings. Sometimes we only mean one. These issues come up in translation a lot, but it's really relevant to all forms of communication. We're always interpreting things. That's just the nature of it. So I wanted to sort of talk about word-based art practices like concrete poetry and text-based art, which I've sort of split up for the purposes of this lecture, and I think end up getting divided into different categories. Although personally, I sort of feel like text-based art and concrete poetry are like one big amorphous, category of things. I wanted to sort of start with that to locate the group of us in this world of visual text, before we dive into it ourselves. So, concrete poetry. In a sense, concrete poetry is a way of saying that your poem is not just a poem, but it's also a picture. It's deliberately looking at the way that it exists visually and not just as words spoken. So we have this example from Emmett Williams. This is sort of an example of the visual presentation of the text supporting the underlining meaning of the phrase. The like is attracting the like until down at the bottom when they have become one unit.
Can you all see Alyson's slide lecture? Okay, great. I can't see it for some reason. So sorry, Alyson.
Thank you for checking, Rochelle. Yeah, good. Yeah, it would be sort of terrible to be talking about things as though you could see them if you couldn't.
Yeah, perfect. Great. Fabulous.
Good. And then we have Klaus Bromner here, sort of similarly using things to, using the visual presentation to underscore the meaning of the phrase. I specifically am really interested in what he's doing here with the second line in, where we both read this word here as legible and illegible because of the use of bold. Sort of interesting to me. Because the text is sort of folding in on itself. And then we've got Madeline Arakawa-Gins. And this is a really nice example of something that, I don't know, there's probably a real term for it. I like to think of it as sort of a self-redaction, using type on top of type to the point where that there's more there that you can read, but the layering is getting in the way of your ability to read it. And the last line here says, this page contains every word in the book. And, we don't know if this is true or untrue, right? But it feels possible because there's so much there, and it makes it feel sort of expansive rather than a redaction being something taken away. And in a different form of redaction as concrete poetry, this is a Isabel O'Hare piece from 2018. They made these poems using apologies that men had issued from allegations against them as sort of part of the Me Too movement. And I really like this piece a lot. They've taken away all of this apology and just turned it into this phrase, are women real? Changing things quite a bit there. So it sort of changes it into a question. And then this piece by Yizi Kular, I think I'm saying that right. My check is probably a little off. I think this is sort of like a bit of a goofy art history joke, because he's taken Joseph Albers' name, Albers, and turned it into a Joseph Albers style piece using only the text. So it's sort of a bit of a joke, and but also like another way of using the text to underlie the meaning, right? It's like taking Joseph Albers' name and turning it into the like signifier of a Joseph Albers piece. And then we have Kimberly Campanello. This is from a longer form poem that's sort of a poetic report about the St. Mary's Mother and Baby Home in Ireland. And then I wanted to show this as well, this poem by Joss Charles. So she's not, I don't think anyone would call her a concrete poet, just, what she's doing is more traditional poetry. But I think that her approach is really interesting because she's using this sort of Old English language, and it slows down our ability to understand what it is. You almost have to sound out the words, and it feels to me a bit like reading her poetry feels a little bit like that experience of reading something when you're still learning how to read and you have to sound things out and figure out the meanings. And that like sort of delays our understanding and allows the meaning of the words to like come up on you slowly in an interesting way. And then we have Mary Ellen Zolt. So this is a piece that you can't actually read, right? So this is a poem that's composed from reformatted diagrammatic codes initially used by NASA engineers to plan and execute the moon landing, which is awesome. So using the codes, she transformed this into the form of a sonnet with the codes appearing in exactly 14 lines with 5 accents. So I think that's sort of interesting, right? Like this at first glance, like it doesn't look like a poem, it looks like a visual image, but it is completely interested in the structure of poetry. So just like almost like the opposite of some of these other things that we've been talking about. I also wanted to talk briefly about emoticons and ASCII art. So definitely related to the history of concrete poetry, but and sort of influenced by those same methods of thinking, particularly like the more image focused work, like this Mona Lisa piece is sort of related to that Easy Pilar piece in a certain way of like making an image out of the text, but you can't read this, but you can see it as a representation of the Mona Lisa. But both emoticons and ASCII art tend to ignore the meanings of words and use letter forms in a purely visual way, with a nice exception being this Rafflecopter GIF that I found, which is still using the meaning of the word to underscore it by turning it into a picture of itself. So,
Alyson, I love that you said raffle instead of like ROFL or rolling on the floor laughing. I think that's so funny that it's like kind of turned into this word in and of itself, raffle.
Yeah, actually, and that's a really good point about the evolution of language that I hadn't even thought of, right? Like, raffle, or we just say lol. Yeah.
Lol, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
now it's just like a verb. It's like, oh, I'm lolling,
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Super bizarre.
Those are all sort of interesting little side notes we can get down, but examine them in your work if you want to. Also, the world is full of glorious possibilities of things to look at.
Love it.
So text-based art, right? Visual art, which includes text as the primary component in the composition or uses text as a medium. So, similar in a lot of ways to concrete poetry, but maybe a little different in others. So we have this Glenn Ligon piece. He's one of my favorite artists, just quick side note, but he made this piece using stencils and an oil stick. And so the stencil itself starts to destroy the legibility of the text as he moves on, because the oil stick gets on the back of the stencil. So it's a nice way of like picking a technique and then working with that technique to sort of like look at the underlying meaning that you can get out of it, but you're just sort of making this simple decision early on. And then we've got this Ed Rusche piece. I think this is sort of interesting too. It's a painting, but the text from this, that was then, this is now, is from a 1985 film, which was itself an adaptation of a 1971 novel, all by the same name. So he's making this painting, but he's pulling that text from out in the world, which I think is an interesting thing to do just as a practice. Working with text that you didn't write yourself can be like a sort of like fun and interesting way to examine your relationship to things in the world. And then we have Barbara Kruger, another classic text-based artist who's using sort of the aesthetics of advertising to make visual art. And Jenny Holzer, another like all-time favorite of mine. And she's sort of putting her text-based pieces into multiple different contexts. And I mean, I think you could argue in a certain way that this work is actually more of a poem than it is text-based art, because she is writing the text and then using it in these different ways. Like each of these phrases show up in multiple different visual presentations in her work. So they sort of end up acting as slogans. And then we have Tracy Emin, it's a neon piece. So she often uses misspellings or casual like crossouts, like with this, which is funny. It's like, this is her handwriting and she's crossed it out, but then of course she's remade it into neon. So it becomes like this really obvious, like, no, I wanted to include the fact that I made a mistake in here to sort of like underscore the like deeply personal nature of her subject matter, try and make it feel like it's close to her. Nathaniel Russell makes flyers using handwritten text, and then will put them up around as well sometimes. I think that's sort of just like an interesting thing to think of as a medium. Flyers on the street can be all kinds of different wonderful things. And honestly, I'd love it if I started seeing flyers around town that were part of an art project. Somebody should do that. And then we've got Anatol Konek. I think this is sort of an interesting piece here. What he's done with erasing the first part. It's only one word that he's working with, but he's used the erasure of the first part of the word to split it into two words and to underscore the word itself, to erase within the word erasure. So sort of there's a lot of background thinking that goes into a piece like this, and then the making of it is likely fairly quick, but to sort of figure out like where you're going to break things up, what you're trying to do with it, which is sort of what I wanted to think about today as well. Like, how do you spend some time looking at the text and figuring out what you want to do with the text, what it is that you're interested in within it. This is Adam Pendleton piece that is, using like spray paint, more showing the hand. Again, there's so many different ways that you can approach text-based art. And this is just also like a really beautiful painting that's sort of, more difficult to read, but you understand that there's text there. There's, just as more examples. Luke Buser is a local Portland typewriter artist, and I really liked this piece as an example. He's sort of using the waveform shape of the R on his cursive typewriter to sort of like make this wave of water, and it's sort of pointing to the fact that like the visual representation of that shape also looks like water itself. And Jeffrey Gibson is a Mississippi Choctaw Cherokee artist who oftentimes uses beadwork to make text-based work. That it just becomes sort of this visually stunning thing that you can also read. I want to add this in as well, because I think that oftentimes with text-based art, we're thinking about it as like as a painting or as typewriter work or something like that, but there's like ways that you can use text in so many different mediums. Speaking of expansive mediums, this is a piece by the wonderful Bay Area artist Susan O'Malley, who a lot of her works are interactive in one way or another. I specifically wanted us to include this in our sort of intro thoughts here to think about the ways in which like the physical context of the space can affect the way that the text is understood. So, you know, this is very specifically part of her piece, A Healing Walk, which is installed in California, and there's different signs that you're walking by, you know, in space. So, so that is that. Sammy Setta is another local Portland artist who works in letterpress. And I wanted to sort of show this as well as another example of just a sort of interesting format. She's using this as like a text and image. So it becomes almost like the text becomes like a caption for the image, as though it was like an illustration or something along those lines, but it's in this non-traditional way. And so it's become one cohesive image. And then to close, Nina Kachadorian did a series of pieces, they're photographs, where she rearranged her book collection or book collections of people who she was visiting in order to sort of write these like text-based pieces using only the available titles of books that were around. So I sort of wanted to throw that in there as well as another method to think about, like that you don't necessarily need to be starting by writing something yourself, that you can sort of look at the space around you and see what materials might be around and sort of like bring a bit of play into it. So on to our assignment for today. So I wanted to look at making something using the supplies that you have on hand. Obviously, you are watching us through Zoom right now, so you're in front of a computer right now, so I might want to start by doing something on a word processing program or like a presentation program. Or, you know, obviously if you have drawing material around and you're feeling like that, that's good. Or even household items and a camera like Nina Kachadorian was doing. Not that it needs to be books, but that you could arrange things. You could take all of your shoes out of your closet and arrange them to make a word. You know, there's all of these like possible things that are around you in your home right now. And the other thing that I really wanted to underscore about this, and it's something that's been on my mind a lot in the midst of the pandemic, but you know, there's restrictions to this. There's restrictions to what you can do with what's around you, but working within those restrictions can be really freeing. I think sometimes when you're thinking about all of the possible things in the world that could be done, it's harder to narrow down what you're interested in. And so starting with some restrictions can actually be a really wonderful way of like giving yourself some focus so that you can think carefully about what it is that you're interested in, what it is you want to say, all of those things. So so really the key here is to think about, you know, start with a phrase and then think about whether you want to emphasize that phrase or undermine it or redirect the focus one way or another. You know, do you start with something that you agree with wholeheartedly? Do you start with something that maybe you sort of agree with, but you have some questions about? What are your feelings about this phrase, and how do you use those feelings that you're having to affect how the visual presentation will look and expand the meanings of the phrase? So some suggestions to start out with. You can try different fonts or colors or highlights, or you could use highlights as a redaction. You can try different letter spacing, line spacing, all of these different things that I'm talking about here. This page has 18 different examples of visual techniques that you could use in a piece that are all made with Google Sheets. It looks like a mess, and it is not like you don't get anything from this page, right? Like there's no understanding what this visual image is, and it's because there's 18 different techniques. So like it's really nice to sort of think about working with only a couple of things at a time and seeing what those mean and what they do. And if you are uncertain about it, just try it with your phrase, look at it, see how it looks like it changes it to you. And maybe it's not right for that phrase, but it's something that makes you think of something else or that you can play with. I think it's nice to be sort of iterative with this and really try all of the different things that you can think of to change a phrase. The other thing that I wanted to suggest as a way to start is maybe to start with a piece of text that you didn't write yourself. I think sometimes it's harder to get that that sense of removal from the phrase with something that you have written, because it's so personal to you and it feels very much like an expression of you, and so it's harder to get that perspective. So if you're having trouble starting, finding something that you didn't write, look for a news headline or look at your text messages. Maybe somebody just texted you some short phrase, see what you can do with that. Just something to sort of get started that you feel like you can get a bit of perspective on. So I'm going to quickly switch over so that I can sort of show you what I'm talking about here.
Hey, Alyson, there was a request to see the assignment slide again.
Oh, yeah, of course. Of course. Let me see. Sorry. Like, no problem. In the middle of switching things over. Yeah, and I can go back to that anytime. So let's see. So here we go. Assignment. Yay. And obviously let me know if you have any questions. And as we start working to be sort of interesting to chat with you about what you're finding or what you're thinking about these things. And feel free to, take a quick screenshot if you want to have this around. So, if we're ready.
I just took it with my phone, so.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
I guess we could work on our phones too. If you're on a desktop, I didn't think about that, but we can work on our phones.
Of course, yeah. Whatever's in front of you that feels good. So, so I just want to start with this. So I have this phrase, from this day forward, which is sort of taken from like a really traditional thing that's used in like a marriage ceremony, right? From this day forward, take you as your husband, wife, spouse, whatever. So, so let's sort of start here and see, sort of see what happens if we make some changes to this phrase. So if I was, say, to redact a couple words, this is changing it a bit. And you are maybe noticing the absence of those words. It's not just saying this day. There are things that you can't see on either side of it, and it's sort of changing the meaning of that. And so maybe it's both saying this day, but also saying that there are things that you don't know. Or let's try turning this into an arrow. So from this day forward, it's moving forward. That's sort of more of a way of underlying the inherent meaning of the text.
Yeah, it's kind of reiterating it, right? Through a visual symbol of the arrow.
Exactly. So those two different approaches to the same phrase end up meaning two different things. What happens if I make this very pale? So it's still saying forward, but it's also turning it into sort of two words. Let's see, what else? These were the ones that I had prepared, and now I'm trying to think on my feet. Which also, just to sort of say within my own practice, the way that I tend to work is by collecting phrases and then looking at them and sort of staring at them and trying to think about what they mean and playing with different things that, different visual techniques that maybe I've used before. I'll oftentimes try a couple of different techniques on the same phrase and see what is looking like the thing that I'm feeling related to it, right? And so I think that it's sort of nice to be sort of loose with this. You don't need to approach it knowing exactly what it is that you're going to do. You can, you can sort of jump in and try something and say, like, is this reading in the way that I want it to? Do I believe what this is saying? Is that feel accurate to me, or does this sort of maybe change it in a way that I'm not that interested in? As I was talking, I sort of noticed that this has his in it. So what happens if I make that bold? It's both. It sort of becomes his day forward. So there's all these different things that you can do, or leave it highlighted, actually, another way of sort of doing the same thing but differently. There's all these different things that you can do with a piece of text, and they all end up meaning different things, even though what we've been doing right now is only using these same 4 words.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of about organization in a way, right?
Yeah.
The organization of letters in relation to other letters that, kind of, talk about communication, right? But even with the words, kind of the letters set up as they are, there are still, multiple meanings that each of the words can have on their own. And then, communicating, and depending on our, if we're saying it out loud, for example, it would be like the inflection in our voice. Or, in this particular case, it's like, do you italicize it? Do you underline it? Do you bold it? Do you highlight it? Do you change the color of it? What does that do? And I think that it's something about, like, it's almost like a visual way of changing the inflection in your voice is kind of what you're doing here. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's, I think that we sort of think of text as being really static and not having an inflection. And obviously, like, I'm sure every single one of us has, like, gotten into trouble with friends where, like, you send something as a text message and you think that what you mean is coming through, and maybe your irony just, like, wasn't registered, and your friend is like, what did you mean by that? Like, what's happening? Or gets mad at you. But there are ways to do that with your text to sort of, like, point towards what it is that you're looking at. And obviously, emojis end up functioning in this way a lot. And if you're interested in using emojis within this piece too, like, go for it. I think at this point, emojis are considered part of text. Another way of affecting the words that you're using. But I think that there's sort of, there's, like, a lot of possibilities within what's seen as, like, more of a static image. What happens if I turn this upside down? Is that still forward? Probably not. It's going backwards. Like, that is suddenly a different meaning. So
it almost starts to turn into, like, a landscape, the way that you have it set up, where it starts to add a horizon line to, kind of the bottom portion of the composition.
Yeah.
And then it kind of creates movement down, right? Like, almost off of the page.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's things that probably we've all already thought about, because they're things within composition that come from how we read, right? Like, because we read top to bottom, left to right, the top left part of any composition is, like, just a little bit weightier than the bottom right. And so, there's things that come up with that within the text that you're using as well, because even more so than regular, people are starting at that top left corner more than they would in a painting, even though that's sort of the approach in countries in which that is the direction that we read.
Awesome. Well, this is amazing, Alyson. Do you want everybody to kind of work together here, or do you want to kind of give them the assignment and have them kind of go off and continue on their own?
Yeah. I am up for either. So if you are somebody who wants to sort of have the group assignment side of things, start working on things, if you're interested in sharing things or talking about them either with the group or with me. Actually, I don't know. Michelle, can we even do that? I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can do breakout rooms if we want to.
Cool.
There's not too many, I think, people on the call. There's 11 of us, I think. So I think we can either decide we can, all be here together and work on it as a group, or, if people need to hop off. Usually people have to hop off, at the hour mark.
Yeah.
Because we have other meetings and things like that to get to. But so we have about 20 minutes left, I think.
Perfect. Well, I think that's like the perfect amount of time to just sort of start playing with this. So if you are a person who likes to work with having the group around, hang out with us. And if you're somebody who likes to work in the quiet of your own workspace without having a bunch of digital eyes on you, that's just fine. You can hop off. Feel free to, but also if you're doing that and you make something, feel free to email it to us. I'm like really curious to see, and I'd love to like talk about it and sort of see what you find. Like this is, I think that text-based work is something that is, it appears really quick, right? Like all of the things that I just did with this one phrase, these whatever 4 or 5 iterations of it all happen really quickly, but finding the meaning of what it is that you're interested in within it is really slow. So use this time to play with it, to think about things, to think about how these things change the meanings, and then to just sort of see what you find with, I'd say like as neutral of an approach as you can. Like maybe you make something and you look at it and you're like, I don't agree with what this is doing at all. I've taken this phrase that I love and I've made it mean something that I disagree with. And like that's an interesting thing to have done. You don't need to make something that you agree with that you want to share. You're just sort of like discovering things about language. So let's play around and see what happens.
Cool. I love it.
Oh, and now Maynard is here for the class. He was asleep.
Hi, Maynard.
He's woken up for the assignment. Yeah.
Cool. Well, maybe let's stop sharing the screen, and then we can kind of get back to the group and then just kind of see how everybody's doing at home.
Yeah.
How are y'all feeling? You want to like kind of stay here and work together? Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. Let's do it.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm working on something. I'd like about 10 minutes and then like maybe to share or block or whatever.
Yeah. I have a few ideas that I've kind of just like quickly sketched out while you were explaining.
Oh, awesome.
So if you want to, I can share. I'm ready to share those. I mean, obviously they're not refined or anything, but they're just like the first things that pop into my head.
That is exactly what I'm hoping to see.
Oh, okay.
So Angeli, I'm going to pin your video just if you're okay with that. So that's for the recording. Okay. I'm just going to pin you.
Cool.
So I was interested in the phrase "save our ship" or SOS.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's very relevant to how I've been sort of feeling lately, is like I just need that, like I need things to kind of stop. Well, and then I was thinking like save, and so it's like when you save something on a computer, it's like freezing it in that particular moment. And so I don't know if this is gonna work, but right here I have, when you click the file and it's like download, save, and then like our ship is the little like out box of that. And then also like thinking of it like the Titanic. So like save our ship written out and then like something going down into it. And I had like kind of a wavy text here.
Oh yeah.
Here's the download, like, the download thing. So again, thinking about save. And then also doing the world. and like doing SOS as the landmarks, and then like something around the outer edge that says save our ship.
Yeah. Spaceship.
Cool. I love it.
That's really interesting. And it's super interesting to see how each of those operates differently, right? Like that's like when you're using the earth, the ship is our entire world, and when you're using the wavy text, it feels like something much smaller, right? That it's like the ship could be like an individual or a small group. That's so cool. Yeah.
If you all want to as well, like if you're able to like take a photo of the pieces and you can upload it to the chat, then we can kind of see them. Maybe obviously kind of showing it up on the screen I think works as well, but if you're able to, and then we can have like a collection of them. That would be great.
Yeah, no, great. Yeah, that's super interesting. I love it.
How's everybody else doing? Does anybody else want to share anything? You want a couple minutes?
I know.
I can play some music.
Play some working jams.
You want some working jams? Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I just wanted to say really quickly before you turn off the music, kind of reverting back to the slideshow thing. Let's see, who did I write here? The one where it's like, I think I wrote it down. Hang on just a second. It's the one where Luke Bercier Michelle, actually, we went to that art gallery, and do you remember the thing that wrote the waves?
Oh yeah, we went to Distracta.
The Distracta show last fall. Yeah,
that was really cool.
I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, I forget that artist's name.
I bet I can find it. I remember taking a picture of that at the time.
I feel like he was related in some way to like the University of Oregon or something, or maybe he was a Eugene-based artist.
Let's see. That was like November of last year sometime, I think. At Distracta.
All right, I'm gonna turn on some music, and I'm also gonna pause the recording. Colin Ives. Okay, great.
It's called The Wave Thread. That's so funny that you brought up. Yeah, I loved that piece, and taking a picture because I was like, oh, look at this.
All right, cool. I'm gonna pause the recording just as an FYI to everybody, so that people who are watching at home are not just sitting here for like 10 minutes while everybody's working. And I'll bring it back in. Hopefully the tech will work. Okay, I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna pin my screen. Give me 1 second here. Right. So can you all see those?
It's like a little narrow for some reason.
Hold on 1 second. Okay.
There we go.
How about that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this is Katharina's.
It's awesome.
My mom has Alzheimer's, and I got a call this morning to say she'd had an accident.
Oh no.
Oh.
I'm so sorry.
She's okay. I mean, she's like bruised, but she's okay.
Oh, and where is she? Is she near here? Or
she lives in Bellingham, which is where I used to, live during that phase of my life. And it's been hard because I'm her power of attorney and I'm so far away and I can't see her anyway. They've let us have visits where she's inside and they open up the double doors and I'm like 7 feet outside. But since she's been living there, which was in February, she's lost her ability to communicate very well. So even when I go visit her, it's not very good anymore. It's been, so basically this, like she's dying of a lonely, broken heart. And yeah, at this point, it's really the heavy part, dealing with that, coming to grips with the fact that my mom is now lost. So lost in Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
So that's what this is about.
I've had, I can relate somewhat to your experience because I lost my dad. And so, yeah, I know how that feels. And so it resonates with me because I know how that feels. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you use that typewriter. I don't know typography, like the actual word or the name for it, but I like that it feels like it's just kind of like dissipating into the ether, it's very powerful.
It is. Yeah, and the change in letter spacing too, it sort of gives that feeling of like distance and like sort of a pulling to it. It's really affecting.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thanks. That was a little bit what I was going for, but I have to admit, even though I don't do concrete poetry, I teach typography. So I just have to admit, I'm not a beginner, guys. But so that part was deliberate. But actually, I haven't done concrete poetry before. So this was a nice opportunity for me, Alyson.
Oh, good. Oh, I'm so glad to hear it. Yeah, you've done such a beautiful job. What a moving piece.
Right. Sorry, Angelia, I didn't have time to turn it on its side, but we can all kind of do this in a really awkward way. Maybe that adds to it, right?
Yeah, it's just the bottom of my notes is where I decided to do my little sketches. So, and I did add on to the Save Our Ship, the one that's kind of closer to the center of the bottom of the page. I added the brackets in there, so it looks definitely more kind of broken up. But yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
I really like the idea of that one with the download or save button.
Me too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. It really sort of points to the multiple meanings of the word save and the way that, it probably comes up in our lives so much more in that context of saving a document than it does with other sort of having a hard time figuring out exactly how to say it, but maybe deeper meanings of the word save or something that feel more resonant, but instead that it could be, sort of what you're saying with it being a snapshot of a moment in time.
It's also there's something about it that's talking about technology and how much we're kind of very, especially lately, so dependent, on it to, and 100 years ago that, at least not computers, that's just not how things worked. So I think it's a very kind of timely, kind of piece, Save Our Ship, and talking about the last 8 months, 7 months of the pandemic too, right? What does the word ship even mean? Kind of, is it we're talking about ourselves as a kind of whole, as humanity? Is the ship humanity? Is the ship the earth that we're living in? Is it, is it all of these things? Is it our families? You can think about it on a kind of micro scale and a macro scale. Yeah. It's really, really smart.
Yeah.
Really smart piece. Thank you. Nice. Okay. We're going to move on to the next one here.
I do have to go back to work, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming, Angelia.
Yeah. We'll see you around, I guess.
Yes,
Bye,
absolutely.
everybody.
Bye. Cassie, are you still here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
This is great.
The sort of the lines and smudges and stuff, my daughter made those, and it was originally oriented that way, landscape, and then I stole it.
It's a collaboration, right? Collaboration.
Yeah. Collaboration.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, I love the incorporation of the lines through the text, and then, you know, above and below it, and all like kind of multiple horizon lines that you're kind of starting to get with it. It's really interesting. It adds
Thanks.
kind of texture.
Yeah, I'm like not sure, like with this thing, like it's just kind of a concept I'm working with, and it's like I think I'm really most interested in like that the play between the words like creature and worker. And so I was just trying to play with different ways that I might be able to force those words together and then rip them back apart. So I feel like the background's like not necessarily doing that, you know, like maybe it's not doing that much, but like, but I think it gave me a space to like start working through that.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really wonderful. And there's a nice, there's so many nice possibilities with that, with like the charcoal drawing with the text there, like that. I feel like that's such like a beautiful place to start.
There's something about adding like the C in this like kind of first one, maybe you can see my arrow, that top one where it's like WCOR, where it's like almost starts to read as a coworker.
Oh,
So it's like creature as work or creature as coworker, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Cool. Nice piece.
Yeah.
Okay. See here. Here's another one from Cassia.
Yeah.
We saw this one a bit earlier. Great.
It's great.
You did this one just now, right?
No, this one is earlier.
Oh, this one's earlier. Okay.
Yeah. This is just like I worked on a series of collages that were text-based, and so just sharing those.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's super powerful. It's also so interesting, just just like taking the cutting out the eyes from the cats really changes them from being cute creatures to being sort of like real intense, like powerful creatures. And then the text just totally reiterates it in that like really grounding, like, yeah, nothing's blank, everything is important and vital, and a blank space doesn't mean nothing, you know?
Yeah.
Very clearly here.
Yeah, it can be the site of violence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Beautiful. Lovely piece. Okay. Kristen.
Oh, cool.
Are you still here, Kristen?
And that must be the photo that goes with the poem earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a project I've been working on for months. I had a dream when a loved one passed away of my arms filling with green apples, and I happened to buy these green apple candles and some real green apples, and just as like a grieving process, letting the apples rot and then lighting the candles as ritual and taking a picture of it every day. So that's just what I've been working on, and why I used green apples in the visual text today. So I just wanted that as a companion for understanding the text.
Yeah. Oh, this is wonderful. And I could see like presenting them side by side as well. Like it's a really beautiful pairing to have the poem with the photo. And so you have a series of these, like each day you're taking a new photo of the apples as they decompose.
Yeah, I've been working on it since late August. So and I haven't moved them. So this is what they look like after a few months of just sitting in the cupboard there.
Wow. I'm surprised I haven't rotted more.
Yeah, that is something that I really just did not expect, was the slowness of their rotting. I thought that they would immediately sort of decompose, but
that feels a little bit like the last 7 or 8 months too, a little bit. You know?
Yeah. Well, and isn't that like such a perfect allegory for the grief process too, where maybe the timeline that you think you have with the grief is not the timeline that you actually have, and that things just your process with it happens at a different pace, and you don't you don't know what it's going to be, you know?
Yeah. And it's definitely not linear. Yeah. Interesting. I wonder what it would look like if the apples were not in a line, you know, like if they were in kind of a group, or if you kind of separated them out in different patterns, or raised some of them up, gave some of them kind of a hierarchy, you know, to the other ones, you know, what that would do, you know, compositionally, and what it would do to communicate different thoughts and feelings. Kristen, did you want to read your poem in conjunction with it?
Yeah. Green apple stamp, green apple candle, green apple lit and alive, green apples rotting, green apple rot.
Wow. It was really emotional hearing you like looking at it and then hearing you say it out loud.
Yeah, I'm so connected with this piece right now, and you know, it's funny. I want to share with you, Kristen, that I often take pictures of rotting fruit and vegetables too, but I haven't really ever done anything with them. I just am somehow like really interested in that rotting process, and my family thinks I'm crazy. And the one day I had this like perfectly rotting avocado, and my husband threw it out, and I was so mad at him, and he was like, "I'll go get you another one," and I was like, "No, you don't get it." So yeah, I'm really connecting to these, and the idea of putting it together with the poem was really strong.
Yeah, I agree. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Oh, Cassie, I think this is another one of yours, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the combination of text and image is always such an interesting thing, the way that they change each other. I also feel like with this piece, with the different fonts in there, like the portions of it that are all in that one smaller italic serif font, I want to read as like one continuous piece, like it separates it out from the other things, so that it's both the totality of the text and then, you know, that as its own separate portion, which is interesting because it's like, you know, we think about something smaller being like of less visual importance, but because it's continuous, it like pushes forward a bit.
Yeah, I agree. There's something about it that's kind of like moving, right? And I think that kind of the interlacing of the lines too, kind of in the upper left-hand corner, the lacing is kind of adding to that too, like the back and forth, front, back, give and take kind of ness of the whole thing. Yeah, playing with depth, I think, is really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at the last one here. And I know they left, but
yeah, it's a wonderful piece.
It really
Worth
is.
looking at again, even though they're not here.
Kids can't raise kids. Can't raise kids.
Yeah, it's just so interesting how, even though the phrase is like, I guess I was gonna say repeated twice, but it's not fully repeated twice because of that shared middle use of kids, but it feels like it goes on and on. It's like that is enough for you to expand it into just being like a sort of perpetually repeating thing that, you know, that you're sort of reading as a continuous circle.
Yeah, I think that's a really good observation. I'm also drawn to the line, this kind of like the blue and the purple, and then like the shapes of the lines and the overlapping of them, they start to look like mountains to me.
Oh,
feels like a landscape, you know.
Yeah. Michelle, always seeing landscapes.
I do. I think because I'm not a text-based artist, like I'm a painter and a, you know, drawer of like kind of landscapes and figurative work. So it's like, you know, I always kind of see either figures or landscapes in pretty much everything, but yeah.
But I can see a landscape in it too. And that, yeah, and just like the sort of the use of the hand in there, like that this highlighting is happening not as highlighting, but as like a gestural movement.
Yeah. Yeah, I like this kind of, it's almost wave-like too, you know? Nice. Lovely. Fantastic work, everybody. This is amazing.
This is just wonderful. Thank you so much. What a joy to sort of see what everyone is working on and talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll call it good there. Thank you all so much for coming and participating. And this is our first workshop being done virtually, so I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but this is fabulous. I love that in like such a short period of time, everybody was able to create a piece of art. So cool.
Yeah, I agree. Thinking about how to hold a workshop virtually was sort of like an interesting challenge for me, to just sort of see what can be done. And everyone really, you really blew me away with what you shared. So thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, Alyson, for joining us. Thank you so much for the thoughtful work that you have been doing, and that is still up at our gallery, archergallery.space. If you get a chance to check it out, that would be fabulous. Thank you all for participating today and coming and joining us. You can check out Alyson's work. It's at alysonprovax.com. Can check out more of her work there. And if you want to communicate further with her about your work or other text-based projects you have going on, I think she kind of offered up her, if you want to connect with her.
Yeah, absolutely. You can email me through my website. I guess actually you can't send files that way, but that's still probably the easiest way. You can send me an email and I'll respond, and you can send me pictures. I'd love to see where this all goes.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for coming, and we'll see you all hopefully at the upcoming Archer Gallery and Clark Art Talks and workshops in the future. So thank you. Have a fantastic weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.